Welcome, everyone, to episode 56 of the Highly Relevant Podcast. I am your host, Jack Rico, and if you are a first-time listener to this U.S. Latino pop culture show, thank you very much for discovering us, and please share the show with all of your friends. On this mid-November episode, I talk Latin Grammys with music journalist Isabela Raygoza from Rolling Stone magazine. We break down the top categories, the possible upsets, what to expect from the telecast, and why some of your favorite Latin stars were not nominated. Also, I review one of the most anticipated movies of the year, DC's Justice League, with two film critics friends of mine, Julian from MovieWeb.com and Emerson Unger from New York's K1047, as we give our first reaction as we leave a private advance screening in New York's Warner Brothers screening room. You won't want to miss that. And speaking of film critics, Gil Robertson, president of the African American Film Critics Association, joins the show to discuss the future of multicultural film and TV criticism with a new venture he's launching called Kaleidoscope Reviews, where he looks to raise awareness of the importance of having African American, Hispanic, Latinx, Asian, and Native American film critics in Hollywood. So keep your headphones on. This is the Highly Relevant Podcast.
Que se sienta el poder de la música. Latin Grammy, el jueves 16 de noviembre a las 7:06 centro por Univision.
The Latin Grammys is airing live tonight on Univision, and to help me anatomize and predict who will win Latin music's highest honors, I have on the line right now Isabela Raygoza. She's a music journalist who writes for Rolling Stone magazine. Isabela, thanks for coming on and talking some Latin Grammys.
Hey, Jack. Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
You know, it's interesting. I was looking at the interest of the Latin Grammys that's happening Thursday night, airing on Univision out of Vegas. And I was looking at to see just what the main... I mean, because this is probably one of the best years historically for Latin music in terms of the mainstream crossover, you'd think that mainstream television, mainstream news outlets, you know, internet sites, Twitter, would be abuzz with the Latin Grammys and just discovering new Latin artists that they've never heard of. And I'm Googling just to see if any one of the big music outlets, Pitchfork, you know, Rolling Stone magazine. I know you're covering for Rolling Stone this week, but you're not really seeing anyone else cover it. Has that been your experience, or am I just like not looking properly?
No, I think you're right. There's only very selective artists that do get to cross over within the mainstream outlets that you've pointed out. And I think it's still going to take a bit of time for the real crossover to happen, where especially we're seeing like more alternative or indie acts there. But, you know, basically you'll see Romeo Santos or J Balvin or, you know, the likes of Daddy Yankee and Luis Fonsi on those outlets, but it's very sparse. It's not that.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that there's a lack of buzz in mainstream media for Latin music, even though we've had one of the greatest years in music for Latinos?
Primarily, it has to do with the people that are in charge of the curation and the editors. I think that they haven't still penetrated the fact that, like, in their psyche, that it's definitely a growing market. There's only a few, like, I mean, The Fader is actually doing an excellent job with covering Latin content. And, you know, they're one of the first to catch on that there's a wave that's, you know, getting bigger. But I think that if the momentum continues, those other traditional, like, big outlets will catch on. I mean, they have to.
Let's kind of break down exactly what's going on with the Latin Grammys. There's a lot to be said about Despacito, which is probably the big sort of song that everyone's looking to see. Is it going to win Record of the Year? Is it going to win Song of the Year? And let's go through exactly what the Record of the Year is so far. There's a lot. You know, it's funny because when you look at the regular Grammys, the English language Grammys, and they usually have like 5 songs. Here it's like, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 tracks for Record of the Year. I'll go through them quickly. La Flor de Canela from Ruben Blades. El Surco from Jorge Drexler, Quiero que vuelvas from Alejandro Fernandez from Mexico, Despacito, Luis Fonsi featuring Daddy Yankee, El Ratico from Juanes featuring Cala Uchis, which, by the way, I'm not so crazy about her, but people are, man. They're hailing her as, like, you know, the hot new thing of 2017. Mon Laferte is more my speed. I like her a lot. She's featured Juanes on a song called Amárrame. Then there's Maluma. Of course, we got to have Maluma. Felices los Cuatro. Vente Pa' Acá, Ricky Martin featuring Maluma as well. So that's 2 Maluma tracks in the record of the year. Guerra from Residente and Chantaje from Shakira featuring Maluma. So that's 3 Maluma tracks. This dude's having... That's it. This dude's like a superstar for this year. You got Shakira, Ricky Martin, Residente, Juanes, Luis Fonsi, and then you got the second tier people. Yet, no one's thinking that Despacito might win this. Who do you think, in your sort of look at this list, who do you think takes record of the year?
Well, I mean, I think the obvious answer would have to sort of be, I mean, Despacito. Just
how can it not be, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be like pretty ridiculous if it wasn't, just because of, I mean, it's been on, it just recently exceeded 4 billion YouTube views. You know, just not that long ago, I think it's a world record at that number, and it was 16 weeks on the Billboard's hot.
Yeah, it tied Mariah Carey's record. But is popularity of a song a death sentence when it comes to prestige award shows like the Grammys, like the Latin Grammys?
I think it's not really like a solid formula. A lot of times, it could be popularity, but other times I think that they do want to go with a non-predictable decision, and you know, sometimes just based it on the quality of the song and how good it is compositionally. So I mean, besides Despacito, my second guess would probably be Residente.
Yeah, you know, it's funny that you mentioned Residente because a lot of people that I've spoken to really like Guerra.
Yo te miro y mi rabia te toca cuando grito sin usar la boca y mi furia se come a la gente porque muerde aunque no tenga dientes.
The dude's really amazing. They really truly love him. I think it's more because of the political statements, the social commentary that he has in his music, and he's really a throwback to like sort of like a 60s type of like, you know, hippie activist musician, where his songs are really not meant to be commercial. They're really meant to sort of change our communities, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, I gotta be honest with you. I don't remember the last time I heard a Residente song. The last time I actually heard a Residente song was with Calle 13. And I don't hear him on the radio. I barely see him do interviews. I don't see him covered that much by Latin outlets or English outlets. So why do you think this guy wins so much, and why do you think the Latin Grammys loves him so much?
Well, I think that, you know, you did point out that he's a very like incisive, pedagogic, and controversial artist and an activist, and also he has a dismal for his, you know, way of seeing things, very comical and satirical. I mean, he's kind of like the whole package of what we like to see in an artist. You know, he has all the dimensions and the throwbacks and like, you know, hip hop, and also just the folkloric beats accompanying that as well. And I think that when you really appreciate the multidimensional aspect of music, we cannot really necessarily look at pop to fulfill that. And I think that, I mean, it was very apt to nominate him several times because he definitely is a very multidimensional artist. And even though unfortunately he does also get overlooked by the mainstream media, because mainstream media basically just want traffic and they look for what's popular. But if you're looking for like real quality, engaging, controversial, pedagogic content, then Residente is a perfect poster boy for that.
Really well said, Isabela. Let's move on to Album of the Year. Ruben Blades again, his album Salsa Big Band. It's funny, like this isn't like your old traditional salsa. You know, he's managed to somehow. He's always been romantic with his salsa, but he's always been like a Residente also with his lyrics, where he makes that incisive social commentary that kind of like really jabs and probes at leaders, at politicians, at the way we live, et cetera, et cetera. So that makes a lot of sense for him to be in the album of the year. Obviously, he's one of the great legend artists that we have around right now. Antonio Carmona, I've never really heard of. Vicente Garcia's from the Dominican Republic, and this guy's been like a sensation. An acoustic, folkloric sort of type, but very un-bachata-like. I think that it's a great new sound coming out of the Dominican Republic with him. Nicky Jam has Phoenix, and this would probably be the most commercially, big album that's coming out in this list of the album of the year. Mis Planes Son Amarte from Juanes, which out of all the albums that I've heard in this list, that to me is my favorite. It's a mix between something innovative, a different sound that Juanes, he's always trying to reinvent himself, but he's left, a lot of that old, like Medellin type of Colombian folk sound, and he's really sort of amped up the electronica, his vocal sort of transitions and vocal stylistics have also changed in this, and he's really sort of reinvented himself with a kind of a new sound in almost every track from Mis Planes Son Amarte. It's just, phenomenal. I love this album. I hear it over and over again. I just don't get tired of it. Mon Laferte has La Trenza. A lot of people really like her. She seems to come out of like nowhere and has made a major impact in 2017. Natalia Lafourcade has Musas. She's always on every single music list that you could possibly think of. Again, we got Residente, which makes him the front runner. Shakira. Now, this is a global superstar. Whenever she comes in, you have to say, well, she has to be one of the favorites to win it. What did you think of El Dorado?
Well, I really like the way that she's been evolving, ever since she started off, in the 90s. And it's definitely, charged with that tropical, coastal Caribbean vibe, and a lot of the featured artists that she has too. I think that makes the album have a lot more weight because they're bringing in their own particular fusions, like Prince Royce and
Maluma, right.
Maluma. You have like that Latin flavor, but at the same time, it has that poppier vibe that makes it very just global. So I think it was an excellent album.
And then the final one for album of the year is Danay Suarez with an album called Palabras Manuales. Have you heard of her, and have you heard the album?
I've heard some of the tracks of the album. I'm not going to say I've listened to the whole thing, but I've always been a fan of Danay Suarez since she came
Describe
out
with, her to me. For people that might not know Danay Suarez, what can we expect from her, and why do you think she's so buzzed about in the Latin Grammys this year?
Well, I'm very happy that she's been at the forefront of, a new artist discovery this year. She's often been compared to the likes of like Erykah Badu or Lauryn Hill. Her work is a representation of Cuban folklore paired against like hip hop cool, and she just has like this sway about her, and I think that there's a lot of artists today, even just within the listings, that are still rescuing that traditional sounds of their hometown, like Natalia Lafourcade, who is in this category as well. She's been very present with that, but obviously
it's a very retro vintagey sound, that they're trying to modernize, but still sort of maintain sort of the spirit of, the great classical, music of yesterday.
Exactly. So, I'm all about Danay Suarez, and even she's nominated for this category and also Best New Artist, which is a contrasting dynamic there. So I'm hoping she'll snag something. I'm rooting for her.
Speaking of Best New Artist, let's go through these because, again, the Latin Grammys just seems to overwhelm us with a deluge of artists. Let's begin with Paula Arenas. She's a very soothing vocal singer. I've heard a lot of her songs. I just have Spotify playlist on and I'm either like cooking or surfing the net, she comes on. I'm like, who's that? And it's like, oh, Pablo Arenas. Oh, not bad. Then you got CNCO, and these guys are it's an interesting story about CNCO. They've been around for about 2 years already. They kind of have the template of One Direction. They were basically fabricated and manufactured on a TV show called La Banda on Univision. They were put together. They were individual artists that Alejandro Sanz, Ricky Martin, and a few others kind of just collected together to create a boy band. And so the girls were cheering, blah, blah, blah. But all of a sudden, they started kind of like getting some like heavy radio airplay. And then as recent, they did a crossover song with Latin Mix, which is a girl band from England. So these guys have really they're the only boy band that I know outside of Rebelde that have really come on the scene and made some sort of impact. What do you think about these guys? Do you think that they should even be nominated, or are they so commercially manufactured that they shouldn't even have been included in a prestigious award like this?
I think that it brings also another interesting dynamic. They also have a secret weapon as a songwriter. I don't think he writes all the songs, but definitely wrote a few of them. Fade. And Fade co-wrote Ginza with J Balvin. So you know how that one went. It won a Guinness World Record for longest stay at Billboard.
Right.
The charts. But I think that like even just with the regular Grammys, we've always been like sort of fascinated with these kind of figures that are, you know, very like aesthetically just boy band, perfect visually, with perhaps don't carry a lot of like that musical merit that they craft on their own as composers, right? But I mean, I think it's all entertainment, and they're definitely entertainment.
Yeah, because I don't remember New Kids on the Block, 98 Degrees, Backstreet Boys, even One Direction making it all the way to the Grammys, and you know, it's just that there's something about a boy band that just seems fluffy. And that just seems vacuous and empty in terms of their music. But I think that might be changing, right?
I mean, I'm thinking about that example of historically with Grammys when Milli Vanilli won, remember?
Oh my God! Yeah, I mean, and talk about the irony, the irony behind that. Simply because they were a manufactured band.
Exactly, that was the epitome of, you know, not true.
Girl, you know it's true.
So crazy. I mean, you gotta have a little bit of some throwback or some nostalgia there for, you know.
Right. So continue on with the list. We got Vicente Garcia once again for the Dominican Republic. I mean, he's all over the place. Then you got Martina La Peligrosa, which I have not heard of. Then you got Mao y Ricky. As I understand it, they are the children of Ricardo Montaner. So it's more of like a poppy thing. And obviously, you know, when you have those genes, there's something to be said there. There's Rawayana. I love Rawayana. Sofia Reyes, which is a Mexican-American girl who seems to have a huge following. Rosalia. Then there's Danay Suarez. And then there's Colombian Sebastián Yatra. He's an interesting cat. He's done crossover music with One Republic. He's worked with some of the biggest acts in urban music. Yet, for some reason, I feel like he's more being forced down our throats then it's more like he either has a great manager, a great record label, or a great publicist. But I don't necessarily know that Sebastián, even though he's out there a lot, I don't necessarily he's putting out some great music. What is your opinion of Sebastián Yatra?
Well, all I know is his hit, Traicionera, I believe. That's the name. I think the first time I heard it, I wasn't like totally drawn, but because I've heard it so many times, it's like I'm sort of singing along to it. And I think that's the way we're programmed to consume, you know?
Right.
But I don't really think much of him. He's not a particular character that stands out to me, to be honest with you.
Yeah, me too. And then finally, let's talk about, you know, probably what most, you know, fans are going to be tuning into the Latin Grammys to see is the best urban song. We got Lingua Franca. Never heard of these guys. I don't know if it's a group or a singer. Achapa e Quente. Have you heard of them?
I don't know. I haven't actually.
No. So the Latin Grammys. But you know what? This is the cool thing about the Latin Grammys. I'll give him that. that they'll put on someone you've never heard of
Yeah.
that hasn't really had any Spotify plays or there's no buzz around it, yet they're awesome. And so I look forward to discovering a lot of great new Latin music through the Latin Grammys. And these guys might be one of them. Then there's Ghetto Kids with Coqueta, Nicky Jam El Amante, which to me is the favorite to win the whole thing. But then you got Hey Ma with Pitbull, J Balvin, and Camila Cabello, Papá, Lápiz Consciente featuring Vico C, and it's the first time we see Vico C come out, return from a long exile out of music. And he's going against Residente and Somos Anormales. And Vico C was one of the pioneers of the whole urban movement, reggaeton movement back in the late 90s, early 2000s.
80s,
yeah. So how does this one look to you?
Well, I cannot speak much of the track because I have not listened to it. But I think that even just featuring Vico C, again, it's another secret weapon that these guys are bringing to the forefront, because as urban players, I think that it was even just strategic, even when we talk about Despacito, by bringing Daddy Yankee into it, because he's also one of the pioneers of reggaeton, not as old school as Vico C, but Vico C carries a lot of that respect from because it's more like hip hop as well, not necessarily extreme urban, like maximalist EDM reggaeton. So I'm excited to see this category just go the way it is, and I think it's a very good mix as well with like you mentioned, artists that I also particularly haven't ran across, and also just your usual suspects like J Balvin. And
by the way, speaking of J Balvin, I barely saw him on any of the major nominations. Was it that his album came out too late and he wasn't eligible for maybe some of these, or has anybody asked you any of those questions? Why? I know he's performing, but I mean, he had one great year.
Yeah, well, I mean, his album Energia did come out last year, 2016. So I don't know if that has to do because of it, and it came out in March, so it wasn't that late. It should have been more present, I guess, last year, which I think it was. But
what about Mi Gente? Because I know that was a big hit this year.
Oh yeah, well, but that one was obviously like the runner-up from Despacito, exactly. I mean, it should have been nominated for Record of the Year, in my opinion, I guess, if we're, going on the popular aspect of it. But I mean, I thought it was like super contagious. Like I hear the beat and it's just like, whoa, it's already like part
Absolutely.
of today's
It's a
culture.
loss not to have, maybe he might perform the song, but it's a loss not to have it. Maybe it wasn't eligible for, because of the time it came out or whatever, but.
Yeah, who knows about the politics with that? Like who qualifies?
Right. And then before I let you go, Isabela, I wanted to talk to you about the performances. J Balvin's going to be performing Bad Bunny, Flor de Toloache, Luis Fonsi. I don't know if he's performing with Daddy Yankee. It'd be awesome if he can do a performance with Yankee. And as a surprise, Justin Bieber comes out and we see, the final closing minutes of the Latin Grammys. That would bring the house down just because they've never performed on television. And I don't think Bieber has ever performed with them, period. I know he did it with Fonsi at a concert, but it was very improv. Daddy Yankee wasn't around. Mon Laferte, Natalia Lafourcade, Maluma, Residente, Sofia Reyes. I heard Diplo just announced that he was going to be performing along with Alicia Cara. French Montana's going to be there with Steve Aoki. So what can you tell me about your personal experience of watching the Grammys? Do you feel that it's the greatest award show in Latin music? Do you is your mind blown every time you see this? Is there room for improvement? What do you like? What do you not like about the visual experience of watching the Grammys at home?
What I do enjoy about it is that we normally see like unprecedented genre mashups and surprise performances from artists that we don't really expect. I do kind of suspect that Bieber might be there. The reason why is because for the past 2 years, J Balvin has brought on Mo from Denmark and Diplo for the remix that J Balvin did for Linon. Then last year he brought for Safari
Oh, right.
Pharrell,
Uh-huh.
Pharrell Williams. So I mean, I think that with a mega star like J Balvin, he definitely has the weight to maybe just convince or sway Bieber. But I guess I enjoy that aspect of it. I guess what I don't enjoy or I find very predictable are normally like that they play it safe. I was very bothered by it last year, particularly because there were no discussions of politics being said, especially with Donald Trump had been elected at that point.
Mm-hmm.
The past 2 years were very like politically heavy with Mana and Los Tigres del Norte declaring in a banner, "Don't vote for races" after their performance together.
Mm-hmm.
And then the previous Barack Obama was saying a speech about immigration. So I found it very odd and peculiar that last year nothing of that sort like was mentioned, especially when the Latin community was wailing on the on that. I think that what I'm expecting too is that there's going to be some sort of honorable or mention or just a space reserved for the victims of the earthquake and the hurricanes in Puerto Rico and the earthquake in Mexico. There had been a lot of musicians that came together to write songs about it and empower the community, and how we witnessed the community lift itself up without the help of the government,
Right.
per se. So I'm kind of hoping to see some of that, being, victims being honored and, just memorialized, I guess. So those are some of the things that I'm looking forward to. And obviously, like the performances, Natalia Lafourcade released one of the most exciting albums, in my opinion, this year with
Mm-hmm.
Musas. So I'm very much looking forward to, seeing that performance. And yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember watching the Latin Grammys on CBS, and this was like the early 2000s. This is the 18th edition of the Latin Grammys. It used to be originally on CBS, and the ratings were never that great. So ultimately, Leslie Moonves and the CBS crew decided to kind of just shove it over to Univision. It made a lot of sense for Univision to have it at that moment, just because they had all the big award shows around that time, and it only made sense for the biggest Spanish media company to also have the biggest Spanish language music award show. So it made a lot of sense. But one of the big problems that I have is you got to understand that when a viewer sits down to watch a music award show, they're looking simply, just pragmatically speaking, to listen to the favorite songs that they've heard on radio or on their iPhone. Those are the tracks that they want to see. But because of radio airplay being so political against alternative music and any other type of music outside of the universe of reggaeton, a lot of these artists don't get that airplay. And so they're seen as new. Like, when was the last time you heard Natalia Lafourcade in any radio station played in America?
Yeah. It's very limited.
It's very limited. And so because, you have your salsa stations, and those are more traditional older people who are listening to it. But when you sit down and watch them, a lot of fans probably go, bathroom break, I don't know who she is, and that song is kind of like depressing, so I'm going to walk off and do something else. And the other thing I wanted to say right before I let you go is, this segregation of music is something that also I feel like needs to stop. I love that we have the Latin Grammys, but we're only playing music to ourselves. It's going, it's like you get the same fans, the same outlets listening to the same artists with different music, and it's not reaching anyone else. We have to use some sort of reverse inclusiveness where this Latin music can be shared to an English language audience. How you do that? Go ahead. Where you
I've always thought exactly the same thing. It's like we played it for ourselves, even just watching Pharrell Williams last year walking on the red carpet, and how these reporters were gushing anytime that there's a crossover or an American act in their event. In our event, it's like, oh my God, like they become like the spotlight because it's not usual
rare.
to see.
It's completely uncommon.
Yeah, and I do believe that I don't know. I mean, especially with what we were talking about earlier, this Latin music boom phenomenon that has occurred this year. I think that there are things to be we're going to witness a lot of change, I think, if the momentum continues and it keeps rising. And I mean, statistically, we've seen it remain with, just like the world breaking YouTube views and that's already like evidence that
Billboard having the top 5 Latinos. I just heard that Camila Cabello, Havana is like top 3. Mi Gente reached very high. Then you had Cardi B coming out of nowhere and landing on the number 1 spot of Dominicana. Despacito, obviously. So there's been a major, massive impact in the billboards.
And the top streaming songs on Spotify in the summer, the top 30 worldwide, there were 7 of them were Latin artists. So that's really massive already. So I think it's like infiltrating. Like, I guess it's more of the rhythm than the language, right. I would say. We were having this discussion previously, and I think it's a very universal rhythm because it's already being sophisticated, quote unquote, with more popular sound. It's not traditional, but still presenting the traditional elements, but kind of revamping them in this sheer of mainstream pop. And I mean, everybody wants to have a good time. Everybody wants to dance, and these songs are extremely catchy and dance-worthy and dance-friendly. So I think that there's, like, even just with the mainstream blowing up and still regionalism, traditional genres still pretty much being planted firm within older generations, it definitely is sandwiching to a smaller point the Latin alternative soundscape. Mm-hmm. And, but there are a few artists that I feel could have like the potential, even like Bomba Estéreo. I was surprised that Bomba Estéreo was not nominated for anything except a music video that from
Can you believe that? Now that you bring it up, I thought they had an excellent album. I interviewed them earlier this year, and oh my God, I fell in love with that album. A friend of mine from Japan heard it.
Fantastic album.
A friend of mine from fantastic. A friend of mine from Japan heard it in Tokyo and says, "Yo, thank you so much for introducing me to Bomba Estéreo. My whole family's dancing like on this weekend, just going up and down. It's because their music is so contagious. I mean, but we go back to this." Politics of music with radio stations and program directors that they're just not open-minded. It's all about, well, this is what's working, and we're not going to, push away from that. But yeah, you're absolutely right. Romeo Santos, which I thought put out a really good album.
Shock.
What the hell?
Especially because, I mean, he's extremely big with popularity. Like, I think he lit up the Empire State Building to match with the concept of the album. So it's like that he's already working with, the Empire State Building and lighting the lights and, still.
And it's star power.
The superstar. Yeah, it's star power. And so for him not to get nominated, I'm like extremely confused because at one point I thought that bachata could have the potential to be within the same caliber of reggaeton, at least. But yes. We've witnessed that trap music does have a lot of that because a lot of the reggaeton artists are also singing trap, like Ozuna and J Balvin, for example. So, and then Bad Bunny is also highly on the rise. He's performing on Thursday. So, this guy doesn't even have any records. He just has a bunch of singles. Yeah. Like how Ozuna began as well. Like just like laying a bunch of singles on YouTube and boom, they go viral.
Well, Isabela, always a great conversation with you. Thank you so much for coming on. I admire your musical knowledge and insights, so thank you again.
Thank you so much, Jack. It's a pleasure being on your show.
It's time for Jacked In. Let's begin with the top movie news of the week. Justice League is eyeing a $120 million opening weekend at the box office. Disney Pixar's Coco is now the highest-grossing animated movie ever in Mexico. Titanic will re-release in 2D and 3D in Dolby Cinemas to celebrate its 20-year anniversary. Ticket app MoviePass may be launching a streaming service. Sam Mendes exits Disney's live-action Pinocchio, and Wonder Woman 2 will now be releasing November 1st, 2019. In TV news, there's a new Latino drama coming to the Starz channel called Family Crimes. Amazon Studios has bought the rights to Lord of the Rings for a whopping $250 million. Page 6 TV heads to Hulu. The podcast Crime Town is getting a TV adaptation over at FX. Netflix's The Punisher begins streaming Friday, November 17th, and the new trailer for FX's The Assassination of Gianni Versace, starring Ricky Martin, Edgar Ramirez, and Penelope Cruz, is out right now. Here's a listen.
Shortly before 9 a.m., fashion designer Gianni Versace was shot on the steps of his villa.
Pronounced Versace. Singer? That's Liberace.
He was a creator. He was a genius. Everything you see around us, this house, this company, it was his life. I will not allow that man, that nobody, to kill my brother twice.
Andrew Cunanan, 27 years old. He's killed 4 men.
This world has wasted me, and yet this world also made you, Mr. Versace, into a star. You're not better than me. We're the same. The only difference is that you got lucky.
Switching over to music, Shakira postpones her European tour due to a vocal cord hemorrhage. Maluma will release a new album titled Fame in 2018 and announces U.S. tour dates, which you can check out on showbizcafe.com. Bachatero Romeo Santos also announces U.S. dates for his Golden Concert Tour, and Demi Lovato and Luis Fonsi have a new Spanish-language song, Échame la Culpa, releasing this Friday, November 17th. In digital and social media news, Apple's new iPhone X is now taking 2 to 3 weeks to ship from the Apple online store. Twitter is re-evaluating its blue badge verification process. Instagram will soon let users follow hashtags in addition to accounts. ESPN launches SportsCenter on Snapchat, and Reddit may go public in 2020. And finally, in Broadway news, Lin-Manuel Miranda will be bringing the Broadway musical smash hit Hamilton to Puerto Rico for a 3-week run in January 2019, and assuming the lead role of Alexander Hamilton once again. John Leguizamo's new Broadway play, Latin History for Morons, has extended its Broadway run for an additional 3 weeks at Studio 54. A Donna Summer musical might be coming to Broadway. Warner Brothers' Broadway musical Charlie and the Chocolate Factory will play its final performance January 14th, 2018.
What's on your weird mind? I'm putting together a team. I'm in. You are?
That was beautiful.
These things are going to keep coming.
You get technical. I'm on bug duty.
Let's do it. Ride ain't over yet. My man.
It's no secret that Warner Brothers and DC have floundered from the very beginning in trying to appeal its superhero films to a global audience. Apart from Wonder Woman's success, can their colossal franchise tentpole Justice League, a film that unites DC's greatest heroes in one film, convert critics and skeptics alike? Well, I discussed this on the streets of Manhattan with the first reaction from longtime film critic Julian Roman from MovieWeb.com and Emerson Unger from New York's K104.7 as we leave a private screening of the film in New York.
I'm Julian Roman with MovieWeb. I do the East Coast stuff. I thought it was better than expected. There were a lot of problems with it, but the characters are good, and if you like Justice League, you'll be entertained, right?
Yeah, I would second that, Emerson Unger, and I would agree with you on that. I was very pleasantly surprised that the fight scene at the end was not extremely long, and I actually liked that, but there were some kind of melancholy moments in the movie.
Well, yeah, let's get through the negative aspects of this, because I think everyone's going to compare the Justice League to the Avengers. Is it better than the Avengers? What did you not like about it?
Well, it's not as good as those movies by far, but it's better, Melissa, better than Batman vs. Superman, much better than Suicide Squad. So it's not terrible, but obviously the film was recut, and so they gave us the best product they had. And I'll say it again, like I say in my review, the characters are good. Affleck owns this movie. You like Wonder Woman. Arthur Curry is great, and that's the basis of something better, right?
This movie isn't Wonder Woman, which really bummed me out. But you know what? I think it was, compared to all the drama that went through to produce this film, I was pleasantly surprised. I was entertained. and I thought it was better than Batman versus Superman. Don't hate me for saying it.
That's that movie's so bad.
All right. It was interesting because I'm seeing this, and like you said, I think one of the big problems about this movie is the overload of CGI. It's bereft of soul. It's a movie that needed a better storyline, in my particular opinion. It needed a better dramatic effect. It lacks something, but nevertheless, it's a movie that should be seen because it has a lot of good things too. So overall, I guess 1 to 5, I would give it a 3, maybe 3.5. What would you think?
I give it a 3.5, a solid 3.5, maybe even a 4. Because like I said, I thought it was entertaining. It wasn't great, but it wasn't by no means bad. And I know a lot of people have been knocking Warner Brothers.
Unfairly, I agree with her. Yeah. A lot of people are going to knock it for reasons that are easily viewable, right? But I think when you look at these movies, you have to look at it as a grain of salt, as a kid, as an adult.
Right.
And it's much better than Batman, Superman. It's much better than Suicide Squad. Isn't as good as Wonder Woman, but you like the characters? The characters are all good, and that's the most important thing. Because think about it, right? Every film that gets recut by another director is usually a fucking disaster. Pardon my French. Remember when Walter Hill recut that movie? And he was like, he didn't even put his name on it.
Right.
Dan Gilroy, he worked on Star Wars. He didn't put his name on it anywhere. But even though that turned out pretty good, so considering what Joss Whedon had to work with, I think it's better than expected, right?
I'm just glad that we finally got to see these characters all together in one single film. It's been something that I think as kids we've been waiting for since Super Friends when we watch it on the cartoons.
Exactly.
And there were hints about it right at the end that we saw when it says 6 tables and it was like room for more. So will we see the Wonder Twins? There's all these sort of...
They're going to try to match Marvel movie for movie every year coming on. So the onslaught is coming.
Do you think that we needed isolated films of Flash and Cyborg before they hit the Justice League?
Yeah, I don't know, because I'm on the fence. Because what I would say is this movie got me very excited about The Flash, very excited for Aquaman. Yeah, I thought both of them were very solid characters and cast very well. So I'm excited to see their own independent films. Going into this movie, I kind of wish that I would have actually had the opportunity to see individual movies, because then I would understand them coming together and why certain things work and other things didn't. Because they kind of tried to throw that in here, and it was just very rushed, which was difficult. That's the challenge of going, we're going to throw everyone together, and not having their backstories.
The thing with Batman vs. Superman is that I felt that storyline needed 4 hours, and it was condensed down to maybe how many was 2:45 or something?
It was 2 hours and 45 minutes of pure hell.
Of pure hell. Do you think a movie like this needed 4 hours to be told properly?
Let me bring it up again, because I'm not sure your audience is aware of this, but Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns 1 and 2 is what that story was. It's a famous comic book from 15 years ago. They made it into a great cartoon that was the first R-rated cartoon from Warner Brothers. Right. And if they had copied that exactly, that would have been incredible, but they didn't. They Michael Bay'd it. They Zack Snyder'd it. And it was awful, right? Yeah. I think what Joss Whedon did is, when he got the cut of this movie, he was like, you know what? I'm going to take all the good parts and tape it together and cut all the garbage out. Because it comes in at, under 2 hours?
Yeah.
Yeah.
159, actually.
So the Snyder/Michael Bay cut, I don't mean to insult Snyder, would have been at least 2.5 hours. Right. And so he thought that was all garbage, and he removed it. And he just said, okay, here's the greatest hits version of this movie, and we'll move on from here.
Right,
I think it's a good plan.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I want to see Joss Whedon take over a little bit more of the franchise and start working with Warner Brothers.
It's interesting. It's interesting you say that, because I think that this should be Zack Snyder's last film. He's been given every resource, every guy that you could possibly get to work on this film. I just think that Snyder no longer has it to make a great superhero film. I was longing for the days of Nolan taking over, maybe, this film in particular, doing something special with it. But I think we're caught up between, do we have that dark superhero movie, or do we have that funny superhero movie? And it just seems like this movie didn't know exactly whether to be Marvel funny or Nolan dark.
Well, I wouldn't say it's dark at all, would you?
It was weird because they kept throwing these one-liners in. It would try to be dark, and then it would throw these one-liners that just never landed. You show up with a pitchfork.
The jokes never fell. Did you laugh at any point?
I did laugh at some points. I mean, some of the sight gags are good, but, I think, once again, not to besmirch Snyder, because Snyder's going through his problems, but if you look at the successful comic book directors, You know, they're guys who lived and breathed this world since they were a kid, and they understand it and they can deliver nuance, right? And if you look at what made Wonder Woman so good, they got a female director.
Yeah.
Alan Heinberg, who wrote the comic, wrote the screenplay. So here you have two people who are like, okay, we're going to make this more than what we think it is. This film isn't that, but all the characters are good enough, so the future looks bright if you get the right people to do it.
Right.
You know, I'm not sure if they went and got like a subpar director, it would be a good second film. But I think if they got someone who was good, you know, they got like the guy who made Spider-Man Homecoming, that guy, you know, get someone like a mega nerd that knows all of his shit, throw him out there, throw some money at him, and he'll probably make a good movie.
Final thoughts?
I always feel bad for Warner Brothers because they're stuck in between being dark and being humorous.
Yeah.
So I know when they kick ass and take names, it's amazing, and it can put Marvel to shame any day, you know. But I don't know. I'm excited to see. Yeah, I'm excited for The Flash. I'm excited for Aquaman.
And looks like there's going to be a sequel. Guys, if you're listening to this, there's 2 end credits. One of them is just the dream thing that we always wanted to see. It's one character, another character, and there's a race. And then the final one, we're going to see a brand new character that wasn't in the film. I'm excited to see how that goes. And I think it's a lead-in into probably one of the biggest battles that we're going to see between superheroes that we haven't seen in a long time. So thank you very much, guys. Appreciate your thoughts and reviews.
If you're looking for some new songs to listen to, check out these 3 tracks you might want to add to your playlist this weekend.
La última canción que te escribo es esta. No va con molestia ni con protesta. No espera que un día toque tu puerta. Puedas entenderla de forma directa.
Palabras manuales. Danay Suarez.
Sigo diciendo palabras manuales. Estoy diciendo palabras manuales.
Sube el volumen y olvida lo feo, vamos a vacilar. Cuando yo te diga, put your hands up high.
Hi, Rawayana featuring Apache.
Algo por acá, otro poco por allá. Que si te vas dejando, me voy encariñando.
743, Miranda.
Dale que te va a gustar, que no te dé vergüenza, que pierdo la paciencia.
Joining me now is Gil Robertson. He's the president of the African American Film Critics Association, and he's here to discuss the launch of a new project called Kaleidoscope Reviews, which promotes diversity among film and television critics. Congrats on the launch, Gil.
Thank you so much. It's exciting. It's always exciting to be on the front side of something new and promising.
Why do you believe that Kaleidoscope Reviews is important at this moment in time?
You know, because diversity and more so inclusion is important. And we felt that it was time to provide an opportunity for diverse journalists to have a place where they can share their thoughts and opinions about cinema, about TV, about entertainment content. And so we just decided to create it. Instead of, talking about it, we decided to do something about it.
Why do you think that outlets like Rotten Tomatoes, Fandango hasn't really embraced inclusiveness and diversity in their critics, especially at a moment like this where you have a film like Moonlight that wins the Oscar award, or you have Alfonso Cuarón and Alejandro Iñárritu winning Best Directors in the last 5 years. Why do you think outlets like that haven't really embraced or have been so proactive in a concept like what you're doing with Kaleidoscope Reviews?
I think that it's something that they're certainly now trying to do. I think that very often it's easy to sort of get lost or caught up in what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for no other reason than that, you haven't seen certain outlets take advantage of the diverse, pool of talent that's out there that's available to offer their perspectives and opinions, about entertainment content. So I don't know if there's anything, menacing or particularly, negative in the fact that they haven't done it. I'm hoping that through, our efforts with Kaleidoscope Reviews and that it will inspire other outlets to also begin to to create a pipeline for a more diverse pool of journalists,
right,
of critics.
So take me through the invention of this project. Was it something that someone had mentioned to you and the outrage was so much that you said, we got to do something about this, and you got together with a few friends and decided to make this? Who's funding it? How many people are involved in it? Who are you partnering with? And do you have, I guess, a group of critics? I know that you've partnered up with Emerson College, NALEP, which is the National Association of Latino Independent Producers, and I believe CAPE as well, the Coalition of Asian Pacifics in Entertainment. How did this whole thing come together?
It actually came out of the conversation that I was having with Jen Yamato, who is a journalist, film critic, currently writing for the LA Times. And we were having lunch one day. This was at the height of the Oscars So White situation a few years ago. And I, just sitting back with a friend, having a talk. And I said, well, if Black people are angry, I said, Hispanics and Asians must be furious.
Oh, yeah.
And she said, Gil, you have no idea. And so, I thought about that, and I said, you know what, after we moved past the craziness of award season, I got together with a few multicultural journalists, one being Jen, and a few others, and I was like, you guys, I'm really interested in maybe creating a vertical where we can, attract, diverse journalists to talk about, entertainment content. And everyone was sort of in agreement. And so earlier this year, we partnered with NALEP for a series of workshops with a group of multicultural journalists. And so that was very well received. And then we did something with the LA Film Festival, which was equally well received. And so that led to me kind of fine-tuning how we were going to roll this thing out. And so we've created partnerships with universities, because it occurred to me that one of the critical things that a journalist and a film critic needs as they are getting their career started is an opportunity to have their work published.
Right.
As you and I both remember, when we were starting, the one question that we were asked at the start of our careers was, where's your portfolio? Where are your clips? And, so that's when I reached out to Emerson, and I had done some work with Emerson prior to that, so there was already a relationship there.
They have a very good journalism department.
Yes, they do. And great professors. I mean, I'm so impressed working with them. And I also reached out to UGA, the University of Georgia, as well as Columbia College in Chicago and Loyola Marymount in Southern California. So I wanted to target the 4, points of the country and sort of expand from there. So we're working with all of the journalism departments, our mass communication departments on those campuses as a way, and they're utilizing Kaleidoscope as a way of furnishing their students with an opportunity to get just that, their first clip. And so working with them alongside working with, some of the studio and network agencies, to make sure that they have access to content and that they can, turn around reviews, and in some cases even do interviews, on, pop, important things in pop culture.
Right.
In terms of funding, we're still in the beta stage of launching the site. We are working with 2 large companies who are probably going to be coming on board as our seed partners, and we're going to move at this real slow. And we're moving through it very purposefully, and we'll see where it goes.
I think it's a great concept.
Well, thank you.
And I think it's widely needed, especially at a moment that we're living in right now. You have movies like Get Out, Mudbound, The Florida Project. I mean, Girls Trip made over $100 million already. And
he had an interesting film called Goop that came out about Korean Americans. I mean, there are a lot of great, Shape of Water is opening
with Guillermo del Toro. Well, you had Coco also just recently that's about to come out in Thanksgiving, which is mainly Mexican storyline, spoken in English. So you have a lot of inclusive content that's not really being spoken by perhaps people of that culture, right? That could maybe more accurately and precisely describe the nuances of the characters. And it's always very interesting because I think one of the big controversies for me in particular as a film and television critic has been seeing perhaps someone who is of Caucasian, having them write something about a Latin American film that's completely in Spanish, that has nothing to do with their culture or their experiences, and then they happen to write it, and then maybe perhaps the review is lambasted or is negative. And the first thing you think of is, dude, you didn't get it. And the movie wasn't necessarily targeted for you, and yet you get to write for it for the Chicago Times or the New York Times or the LA Times or whatever it is. And I think that sometimes editors make the mistake in assigning certain films to people that might not necessarily get the content, or it's a film that might not be targeted to them, in order for them to reach perhaps a more white audience or something like that. Have you felt that on your end, and have people spoken to you about things like that?
Oh my God, yeah, that's exactly one of the motivators for why we felt there was a need to do this, because so very often you have product being reviewed by people who aren't part of that community, and of course that's not to say that those individuals don't have the ability to discern and communicate their thoughts and impressions about a particular project. But certainly when you are tapping into a talent base that includes people from diverse communities who might, to your point, be able to provide commentary that's more specific to the content being screened. And that's simply what we're asking for here, is the opportunity to people want to have the best understanding, not just an understanding, the best understanding of a film like Coco, of a movie like Moonlight, of a film like Goop, and of course, if you're able to, those films or that content is being judged or being viewed or being critiqued by someone from that community, I just think one can automatically, it's a given that they're going to be able to speak to it from a place that
of authenticity and genuineness that perhaps
Absolutely.
Other people can. I totally agree that there's a particular people are qualified and prepared to speak on certain subject matters than others. And even though we all have opinions, some opinions are better, and I think that Kaleidoscope Reviews definitely targets that. So now that so let's just go to phase 2, right? So phase 2 is you get this launched, you get all the journalists. Now, once everybody writes their reviews and opinions on entertainment content that is multicultural, then what happens?
There certainly will be the opportunity for other outlets to pick up or license the content that's on the site. Obviously it will be, very carefully archived on the site. We're looking at the launch to be sometime as we approach the summer movie season for 2018. I mean, this is not something that we're creating necessarily as it's more as a talent incubator, really. And so,
once that talent is prepared, though, once that talent is qualified, prepared, and ready to go, right? Like they've mastered, I guess, the whatever criteria was asked of them. Where do they then head to?
Well, hopefully, I mean, we're going to continue through our partnerships with CAPE and the LEAP and other organizations to offer, journalism workshops to groups in, LA and New York and, certainly major markets, and certainly, partner with our college campuses. And, ultimately is to prepare these journalists to enter into the workforce,
Right.
and to create some sort of, to add to the pipeline of diverse journalists who are out there and who are available to be hired.
I wanted to ask you about interest from our multicultural communities when it comes to film criticism and television criticism. I paralleled this with sports. There was a big talk in sports about how African Americans just aren't interested in baseball anymore. And so there was a lot of talk about, well, it's just that the community itself just finds baseball boring. They're not really interested. And then there was talk about how baseball isn't really approaching these communities for their talent, and it's really become sort of a wider, maybe Latino sport, but no African Americans. And so I parallel that with criticism. Do you feel there's a lot of interest with people of color to want to get into film criticism? Or are they interested in other things and they just don't care? Because maybe that might explain some of the reasons why there's a void there.
I think it's the fact that there hasn't been a lot of exposure given to, the opportunities, the professional opportunities that can come out of being a film critic. I mean, both you and I have been able to build, successful, sustainable careers, as film critics and film journalists. Film and TV journalists. So I think that as more exposure is given to, the various career opportunities and career tracks that can be derived from, reviewing movies, reviewing TV, that you'll see more people from those communities involved.
Gil, and before I let you go, I know you're the president of the African American Film Critics Association. What can we expect from the organization this year, next year, in the future?
Well, we just announced that we're, calling 2017 the year of the woman in cinema. 2017 was absolutely amazing in terms of, the record-breaking opportunities seen by women behind the camera.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly, obviously, Wonder Woman stands in front of the class with regards to its box office, and critical success. It was also an exceptional year, one-of-a-kind year for Black female filmmakers.
Yeah, Dee Reese is one of them.
You had a record total of 6, studio films filmed by, Black directors. So, I mean, those numbers are just unheard of. And so we're gearing up for our annual, tentpole activity, our awards program, which will have our luncheon on February 3rd, 2018, where we're honoring ABC Entertainment President Channing Dungey with our Ashley Boone Award, legendary actor Edward James Olmos with our Legacy Award, Claudia Pugh will receive our Roger Ebert Award, and Alcon Entertainment will receive our Cinema Vanguard Award. So we're thrilled. We're setting up for that now, and we're also preparing for the big show, which will be on February 7th. So this is our busy season. It's award season, and we're definitely in the throes of it.
Well, congratulations, Gil, on the Kaleidoscope Review launch, and obviously your work with the African American Film Critics Association. Thanks a lot for being on the show, and thanks for parting and contributing also to raising awareness of diverse voices in film criticism. It's something that we highly, highly need. So thank you very much for creating this and for giving an outlet for those.
No, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to, meeting you and hopefully collaborating with you on, the work that we're doing.
Absolutely. All right, Gil, thank you so much. That's it for episode 56 of the Highly Relevant Podcast. I'd like to thank Isabela Raygoza, Julian Roman, Emerson Unger, and Gil Robertson for coming on the show. And thank you guys for taking the time out to listen from your favorite streaming platform, wherever you may be. If you like this U.S. Latino podcast, please share it on your social media apps. Tell your friends all about it. And if you can, please have them subscribe to the show. Hope you enjoy your weekend and stay connected with us via showbizcafe.com. See you next week on another episode of Highlight.